So, um, when the author of today's source text was growing up in a small Indian village, he was actually a pretty sickly kid.
Right?
And his family, they often relied on the local village doctor. Now, this doctor had this special cooling oil that he prescribed for fevers,
Okay.
but he didn't just market it as a fever reducer. He claimed this oil was like an absolute miracle cure for hair loss.
No way.
Yeah. And to prove how, devastatingly effective it was, the doctor gave his patients a really stern warning.
I love this part.
He basically told them, you have to apply the oil directly to your scalp using a tool. Because if you get even a single drop of it on your bare hands,
Hmm.
thick hair will just start growing right out of your palms.
Which is, I mean, it's an incredibly vivid image, right? As a marketing tactic for a village doctor, it's absolutely brilliant.
Oh, totally.
Conveys this, undeniable potency.
Exactly. But the author, Sri Bhagavat, notes in his text, which is called Smash Your Sorrows, that while the oil genuinely did help with fevers, the palm hair warning,
Yeah.
that was just a massive exaggeration designed to sell the underlying philosophy of the cure.
Right? It was just marketing.
And that kind of sets up the ultimate mission for our deep dive today with you, the listener.
Hmm.
Because we are unpacking Sri Bhagavat's really radical, logically driven psychological framework. It's a system that promises total, absolute freedom from inner sorrow,
And that's a big promise.
right? And not by changing anything about the external world, but entirely by understanding the mechanical functioning of our own minds.
Exactly.
But, you know, anytime a text promises a completely sorrow free life, we really have to ask, is that a genuine, attainable reality? Or is it like the philosophical equivalent of the palm hair warning?
Well, based on the arguments presented in the text, it is actually an entirely accessible reality.
Really?
Yeah. To explain how you know, a sorrow free state can exist in a world that is frankly full of tragedy and stress, the author uses the human immune system as a baseline.
Okay, how so?
So, when scientists look at a sample of human blood under a microscope, they routinely see deadly pathogens and bacteria just swimming around.
Right? It's never completely clean.
Exactly. But the mere presence of those germs doesn't automatically mean the person is sick.
Because the germs are neutralized, like the immune system is functioning correctly, so even though the environment is hostile, the internal defense mechanism just renders it harmless.
That is the core premise.
Yes.
Okay, the germs are the external problems, right? The challenging situations, the material losses we all face,
Yeah.
those will always exist. Expecting a life without external problems is absurd.
Right, completely.
However, if a person possesses genuine mental clarity, which functions as a sort of psychological immune system, those external problems can occur without causing any internal psychological suffering.
So the event remains a fact, but the sorrow itself is neutralized.
Precisely.
Okay, so if external facts are just like neutral pathogens, the vulnerability lies entirely in how our mind processes those facts. There's a narrative in the text that perfectly illustrates the mechanics of this, involving an Indian peasant, his wife, and his daughter.
Oh, this is a great story.
Yeah, so the peasant is out in the field and he's deeply stressed because he needs to sell his old bullocks, but the local buyers just keep giving him these insulting lowball offers.
Right. He's totally ruminating on it,
Exactly. So he's sitting there stewing when a stranger walking down the road stops and asks, "Can I go this way to the market?"
which is a completely neutral request for information. I mean, it's just an external fact occurring in the environment.
But the peasant is so trapped in his own internal narrative that he doesn't hear a request for directions.
Right.
He filters the question through his own anxiety and assumes this stranger is, yet another buyer making a veiled lowball offer for the bullocks.
He's projecting.
Exactly. So he angrily snaps, "I will not agree to this amount." And the stranger, totally bewildered, just walks away. But it gets worse. Later that day, the peasant's wife brings him lunch. And she has her own internal narrative running, right? She constantly feels unappreciated for her domestic work.
Right. Right?
So while eating, the peasant casually mentioned, some new person came just now, offered a low price, and I angrily refused.
And here is where the distortion really compounds.
Yeah,
The wife filters his comment through her own deep seated insecurity. She assumes he is talking about the lunch she just prepared.
right.
She thinks he is rejecting her food, so she angrily retorts, "Have you ever appreciated my cooking?" and just storms back to the house.
And I mean, it doesn't even stop there.
No, it spreads.
The wife goes inside and complains to her daughter. She says, Dai, your father, as usual, told me he didn't like the food, so I asked if he ever appreciated me.
And of course, the daughter has her own active anxiety.
Exactly. She's terrified of becoming a spinster because her parents haven't successfully arranged a marriage for her yet. So, hearing her mother use words like rejecting and not appreciating, the daughter assumes her parents are rejecting potential suitors.
It's just a chain reaction of misunderstanding.
Totally. She erupts, yelling, if you both reject all the grooms, naturally I will become an old spinster.
It's wild. One single, completely neutral, external event, a traveler asking for directions, is processed by three different minds, resulting in three entirely separate, fabricated internal realities.
Wow, yeah,
The text uses this to distinguish between what it calls real objects and reflected objects.
right. Hmm,
Think of a mirror. When you need to comb your hair, you can't look directly at your own physical face. You have to look into a mirror and interact entirely with the reflection.
right.
Our mind acts as that mirror for reality. The physical world exists, yes, but we only ever interact with the reflected world our mind creates, labels, and, colors with our own anxieties.
Okay, let's unpack this because there's a mechanical distinction being made here between two different ways this mirror operates.
Yes, there is.
The text separates the intellect into the functional mind and the dream mind.
Hmm.
And if I'm understanding the architecture correctly, the functional mind is like the raw processing power of a computer.
Right?
Like, it executes practical commands. It calculates the physical route from your office to your house.
Yeah,
It deals purely in objective variables.
exactly. It's strictly utilitarian.
But the dream mind, it's like a malicious software virus running in the background, aggressively corrupting that data.
That's a good way to put it.
Like, the text uses the scenario of rushing to a hospital to see a sick parent. The functional mind navigates the traffic and parks the car.
Yeah.
But the dream mind, that's the part of your brain that is already visualizing the funeral and feeling the grief of their death before you've even walked through the hospital doors.
Yes. What's fascinating here is that the dream mind isn't just imagining things, it is actively creating what Sri Bhagat calls dream objects.
Dream objects?
Yeah, these are perception completely saturated with bewilderment. They lack physical reality, yet they generate a very real physiological response in the body.
So they feel completely real.
Totally. The text illustrates this with the mirage analogy. Driving down a highway on a blistering day, you might see what looks like a pool of water on the asphalt.
Sure, we've all seen that.
Right. Your initial reaction is bewilderment, but the moment your intellect recognizes it as an optical illusion, the bewilderment vanishes. The image of the water doesn't magically disappear from your retina. You still see the mirage, but you are no longer fooled by it. You no longer pull over, trying to drink from the hot asphalt.
Right. So the objective isn't to obliterate the mirage. The objective is just to recognize the illusion so it loses its power to dictate your actions.
Exactly.
But, and here's my question, if simply recognizing the illusion stops the bewilderment, why are human beings so chronically bewildered?
That is the $1,000,000 question.
Right. Like, why do the projections of the dream mind cause us such visceral, sustained pain?
Well, Sri Bhagat defines the exact root of this sorrow, and it all comes down to friction.
Friction?
Yeah, sorrow is the friction generated when a happened fact collides with a psychological demand.
Okay, give me an example.
Imagine losing a highly valuable heirloom.
Uh huh.
The destruction or loss of that physical object is a fact. It has occurred, it is locked in the past, but simultaneously, your mind generates a demand. It says, "This should not have happened. I demand that this object still be intact."
Right, we fight reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That psychological demand is also a fact. It is an event occurring inside your neurological system.
So we are holding two mutually exclusive realities in our consciousness at the exact same time. The physical reality that it is gone, and the psychological reality demanding it is still here.
Yes. Grinding those two contradictory facts against each other in the same space creates immense psychological friction. And that friction is what we experience as sorrow. But, you know, the mechanism of human suffering is actually more complex than just that initial friction because we engage in a secondary process the author calls the attitude of denial.
So we don't just deny the original event, the denial itself becomes layered.
Precisely. We deny the original fact which sparks the sorrow, but human beings fundamentally reject psychological pain.
Of course.
So the moment we feel the sorrow, we pivot and begin denying the sorrow itself.
Oh man,
We fight the feeling, we try to suppress the grief, ignore the anxiety, or combat the depression.
you're fighting the immune response.
Right. Sri Bhagat compares this secondary struggle to a man trying to fight his own shadow.
That sounds exhausting.
It is.
Yeah.
The man wants to get rid of his shadow, so he digs a deep pit in the sand to bury it. But then he finds the shadow just falls on the bottom of the pit.
Naturally.
So he places a large vessel over the pit to cover it, but the shadow just projects onto the vessel. He brings over a bright lamp to destroy the darkness, but the lamp simply casts a new shadow in a different direction.
Yeah.
Fighting the shadow is an endless misallocation of energy.
I have to challenge the utility of that framing though.
Okay, go ahead.
If fighting the shadow is a complete waste of energy and denying our own denial just creates more layers of denial, the system seems rigged.
It does feel that way.
Like we are trapped in a recursive loop of our own making.
Hmm.
If the tool I use to fix the problem is the exact same tool causing the problem, how is escape even theoretically possible?
This raises an important question and it identifies the exact blind spot of human intellect.
Okay,
The intellect operates by fixing problems, so it naturally tries to fix sorrow using denial and suppression.
right.
To break that recursive loop, Sri Bhagat argues we have to examine the actual microscopic mechanics of how an emotion functions.
Microscopically?
Yeah? He references the ancient philosophical concept that you can never step into the same river twice.
Because it's always flowing.
Exactly. A river isn't a static object, it is a continuous flow of new water. Psychological feelings operate on the exact same principle. They are constantly moving. The most radical claim in the text is that the natural, uninterfered lifespan of any feeling is only a fraction of a second.
Wait, really? A fraction of a second? I think most listeners would immediately reject that. I mean, when someone experiences a deep depression or a burning resentment, it feels like a heavy blanket they wear for months, not something that vanishes in a microsecond.
It does feel that way, yes. But the text provides a really powerful acoustic analogy to explain the discrepancy between what we feel and what is actually happening.
Let's hear it.
Imagine holding a heavy brass vessel and letting it drop onto a hard stone floor.
Okay,
The impact creates a sharp, loud DNNN sound, and then the sound instantly vanishes into silence.
right.
That sharp impact is the natural lifespan of a raw emotion.
Oh, I see.
However, if you grab that same brass vessel and intentionally drag it continuously across the stone floor, it produces a long, agonizing, unbroken screech.
Oof. Yeah, I can hear that.
It sounds like one permanent, agonizing noise, but mechanically, it is thousands of tiny new impacts being generated over and over by your continuous effort.
Wow. Here's where it gets really interesting because the text outlines the actual subconscious feedback loop that keeps us dragging that vessel.
Yes, the ABCD loop.
Right. Let's look at the mechanics of it. An incident happens, our mind processes the incident, which triggers the subconscious to spit out a raw emotion, say, a sharp pang of sorrow.
That's the first impact.
And if we do nothing, the sorrow sounds its note and vanishes. But we intervene. We generate a new thought about the sorrow. We think, I can't stand feeling this sad. Why am I still grieving? This is ruining my life.
Exactly.
That secondary thought acts as a new input, dropping right back into the subconscious, which then generates a brand new pulse of sorrow.
It's a continuous cycle.
It's like it's like we get stung by a bee, which hurts for a second, but then we consciously decide to keep poking the sting with the needle and we blame the bee for the continuous pain.
That is a perfect analogy. The feedback loop is the modern equivalent for what the text describes. Because we maintain the feedback loop, we suffer under the illusion that the sorrow is a permanent static entity.
Right.
The text asserts that the experiencer and the experience are actually not separate things.
Rue.
Yeah, the you that feels the sorrow and the sorrow itself are created simultaneously. They are newly birthed every fraction of a second by our continuous thoughts, just like a mind creates both a landscape and the protagonist within a dream.
That is heavy. But let's apply this framework to more volatile states.
Okay,
If an emotion genuinely only lasts a fraction of a second, how do we explain the mechanics of something like explosive rage or deep rooted addiction? Because those forces feel entirely out of our conscious control.
they absolutely do. Srivadnavad breaks down the mechanics of anger into very distinct stages to explain this exact phenomenon.
Okay, let's break it down.
The first stage is unconscious anger, the, the initial spark. It arises completely spontaneously from the subconscious and it carries maximum power, like 100% power.
Wow.
It's an explosion and you cannot stop it because it occurs before conscious thought even registers the event.
So, like the sudden spike in adrenaline when a car swerves into your lane, you don't decide to be angry. Your nervous system is already reacting.
Right, but that pure unconscious stage ends in a microsecond.
Okay,
It immediately transitions into the second stage, which is conscious awareness.
okay.
This is the pivot point where you realize I am experiencing anger. At this specific moment, the pure force of the unconscious anger drops to about 40%, and your conscious mind steps in to take 60% of the power.
Oh, so we suddenly have the leverage.
We have the leverage, yes, but we almost always use it to fall into one of two behavioral traps.
What's the first trap?
The first trap is justifying.
Justifying.
Yeah, your conscious mind reviews the event and decides the anger is warranted. You think that driver was reckless. They deserve my rage. I'm gonna teach them a lesson.
Oh, I've definitely done that.
We all have. By giving your full conscious consent, you merge your deliberate energy with the lingering unconscious anger. They multiply against each other, creating a massive surge of temporary madness, like 200% power.
That makes so much sense.
This is a compounding mechanism that leads to screaming, violence, and chaos.
So, justifying the anger basically acts as an accelerant. It just throws gasoline on the spark.
Exactly.
So, what is the second trap?
The second trap is suppressing.
Ah,
Your conscious mind decides that being angry is inappropriate or dangerous, so you aggressively force the emotion down. You force both the conscious and unconscious parts down to about 25%.
so you're just burying it.
Right? You don't let it express, but you don't let it dissipate either. You trap both the conscious awareness and the unconscious spark in a sealed psychological container.
like an internal pressure cooker.
Precisely. The energy doesn't disappear, it ferments. It turns into a grudge or a deep resentment, storing up immense kinetic energy in the subconscious, just waiting to explode at later, often completely unrelated trigger.
Man, and the text applies similar mechanics to the quicksand of bad habits too, right? Whether it's compulsive drinking, smoking, gambling.
Yes, it does.
The foundational architecture of a habit isn't the substance itself, but the mind's relentless seeking of pleasure and avoidance of friction.
We initiate the habit to acquire pleasure, but eventually the mechanics invert.
How so?
The text illustrates this with a fable about two men standing near a violently flooded river.
Mhm.
One man spots what looks like a valuable parcel wrapped in a blanket floating downstream.
Okay.
Desiring the prize, he dives into the dangerous water and grabs it.
Hmm.
But the parcel is actually a live wild bear that was swept away in the flood.
Oh,
Yeah, the terrified bear immediately latches onto the man to stay afloat. From the shore, his friend screams, "Let go of the parcel!" And the man, struggling to keep his head above water, yells back, "I'm trying to let it go, but the parcel will not let go of me."
it's a terrifying metaphor, but structurally, that is exactly how addiction functions in the brain.
It is.
We hold the habit, and then the habit holds us. And Srivanava also brings in a mythological reference from the Indian epic, the Ramayana, comparing the struggle against a habit to fighting the legendary monkey king Vali.
Right? Wali has a magical boon.
Yeah. Vali possessed this magical boon where whoever challenged him in combat automatically lost half of their own strength, which was magically transferred to Vali.
That's brilliant.
So, if you fight Vali, you empower him with your own energy, basically guaranteeing your defeat, and fighting a bad habit is exactly the same. The effort you exert to combat the craving simply feeds more energy into the obsession.
It does.
But this leaves us at an incredibly difficult impasse. I mean, if giving into anger causes chaos,
Hmm? Hmm.
and suppressing it causes an internal pressure cooker, and directly fighting a bad habit just gives the habit super strength like Vali.
Mhm.
What on earth are we supposed to do? Are we just meant to be angry addicts?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Sri Bhagavat points out that all of these reactions, whether violently fighting the urge or utterly submitting to it, are functionally the same thing.
How are they the same?
They are both hidden forms of pleasure seeking. Even the desperate desire to successfully conquer a bad habit is just the mind demanding a future state of pleasurable, frictionless peace. The expectation of success in beating a habit is just another demand that reality be different than it currently is, which, as we established earlier, is the root cause of all sorrow.
So we have to abandon the entire paradigm of fighting versus submitting.
Which brings us to the core thesis of the text, the third way.
The third way,
Yes, this is not a method of action, it is a method of pure understanding. The author terms this state conscious unconsciousness.
okay, I need to push back on that phrasing. Because conscious unconsciousness sounds like a complete paradox. How can a mind be both simultaneously?
It sounds contradictory, but it means bringing total conscious acceptance to the unconscious functions of your mind.
Okay,
It is the deep structural realization that your feelings, the sudden spike of rage, the craving for a drink, the wave of grief, arise completely spontaneously from the subconscious layer.
right.
You, the conscious ego, are not the author of those initial sparks.
We don't control the germs.
Exactly. If you truly mechanically understand that you are not responsible for what happens unconsciously, you completely abandon the instinct to fight it, justify it, or suppress it. You stop holding the microphone to the speaker.
Because there is no enemy to fight and no territory to defend.
Precisely. The text observes that true psychological success only ever enters through the back door.
through the back door,
Yes. Failure, struggle, and frustration constantly bang on the front door, demanding immediate results and altered realities.
right?
But when we entirely surrender our expectations, when we drop the desperate demand for a pleasurable state of mind, the grip of the bad habit or the sorrow loosens entirely on its own. It starves because we are no longer feeding it the friction of our resistance.
Wow. Sri Bhagav quotes the ancient text, the Yoga Vasistham, which says, "One who renounces the world by seeing everything in the world equally, he alone is the real teacher."
It's a profound shift.
It really is. The text reframes renunciation completely. It isn't about fleeing to a cave or avoiding the complexities of life. True renunciation is an internal mechanical shift where you process pleasure and pain, success and failure with the exact same level of neutrality.
The moment you treat them equally, you stop generating the friction of preference. Sri Bhagavat uses a fantastic mechanical analogy of slamming the brakes on a car driving at top speed.
Okay,
When the brakes lock the wheels, the car can no longer move forward, so the momentum forces it to violently spin around.
yeah.
When the human mind finally realizes that there is absolutely nothing to attain psychologically, that there is no perfectly peaceful future state to sprint toward, the mind stops projecting into the future. It spins around and settles back into its natural frictionless source.
So, what does this all mean? Structurally, it's like we've been drowning because we've been thrashing around trying to swim to the surface.
Yes,
And the third way is just the counterintuitive realization that if we stop thrashing and just relax, the human body naturally floats.
it beautifully aligns with the text. Sri Bhagavat writes that by ceasing all psychological effort, our mind transforms into a divine river.
A divine river.
Yeah, in a freely flowing river, dirty water naturally purifies itself simply by continuing to flow. The dirt only festers and becomes toxic when the water's movement is halted by a dam.
Right.
When we stop trying to govern our internal ecosystem, when we stop building artificial dams of denial, justification, and suppression, our experiences just flow right through us, completing their natural life cycle in a fraction of a second.
Incredible. So, to synthesize this entire framework for you listening, the journey through Smash Your Sorrows reveals that external facts, the germs, only hurt because our mind denies them.
Exactly.
The sorrow we feel is just the friction between a reality we cannot change and a psychological demand we refuse to drop. Every feeling actually lasts only a fraction of a second, but we stretch it into a lifetime of agonizing noise by dragging the vessel across the floor.
We do.
By giving up the desire to attain a perfect painless psychological state, we achieve exactly that. We don't have to change the external world, we simply have to stop fighting our own shadows.
And if we deeply internalize the mechanics of this framework, it leaves us with a truly staggering reality to confront.
What's that?
Well, if our entire sense of self, conscious experiencer, is constantly being recreated every fraction of a second based entirely on what we are experiencing in that exact moment,
Hmm.
then the person who started listening to this deep dive literally does not exist anymore.
Wow.
That version of you is gone. So, having understood how the machinery of your mind actually works, who are you going to let yourself become in the next fraction of a second?